Good day and welcome. My name is Mark Johnston, your host for Your Vote, Your TV's extensive coverage of the 2022 municipal election here in Cobourg and Port Hope. We have the great pleasure today of welcoming Laurie Carr, Member of Council and Mayor candidate for Port Hope. Welcome, Laurie.
Oh, thank you very much, Mark, for having me here.
We're glad to have you here, and as we have explained beforehand, this is a casual conversation to get to know more about who Laurie is, your vision for Port Hope, but also to get to know you from a human lens of who you are and what excites you about the role of working in politics and community service as well.
Okay.
Thank you for that. So I know you do have quite an extensive background. I believe it's at least a couple of decades worth of community service.
That's right.
Tell me more about that.
I guess the original thing that I decided to do in Port Hope was to become involved with the downtown BIA, the HBIA. And being a downtown business owner, it was very important to me to be actively involved with the community. And so I did that for a few years, went through the different roles, became chair of the HBIA, and then I moved on from that, and there was a new committee that was forming, which was for downtown revitalization. And I felt that that was just the natural progression from being on the HBIA. So I joined the Downtown Revitalization Committee. And that committee lasted for just about 3 years, and I ended up as the chair of that committee. And that committee got disbanded at the time when there was a change in election, actually, at the time. And that committee got disbanded. So I then joined the Economic Development Task Force that was available in Port Hope. I worked on all of these committees with such strong, dedicated, wonderful people that every single one of them that I worked on, I gathered more knowledge and more information about Port Hope and the wonderful people that are there. So the Economic Development Task Force lasted for 2 years, I believe. It had a short mandate, and the mandate was just basically to work as a group and brainstorm ideas for economic development in Port Hope. And once we got to a point where there was a proposal that was written and prepared and the ideas were done, being a task force, that was it. It was over. And I was a couple of years that I wasn't involved in anything, and I thought it was time to step it up a little bit, and that's when I decided to join council back in 2018. So yeah, I've been involved in community service for, as you say, a couple of decades, and I love it. It's such a great complement to the business world, which I've got the 9 to 5 all the time, and it's a really nice complement to that. So I'm really pleased that I got engaged.
Wonderful, thank you. So you obviously bring all those skills forward into your position currently on council. I understand you're the chair of the finance committee as well, so very much hands-on with budget and managing where the city goes in terms of overall planning and where we put our beans in different categories. So,
that's right.
It sounds like that's a bit of a passion for yours, if I understand correctly, that finance is really the engine, and that you have some great dreams and hopes as mayor to see where that might go. So can we explore that a little bit, Laurie, in terms of perhaps the pillars of your campaign? How does it break down in terms of the key pillars of what you're proposing?
Well, first, just to confirm that yes, finance has been what I've worked in my businesses. That's the side of the business that I handle. So I have always handled the financial side in the business. And so I was delighted when I was appointed to be finance chair, because that's my natural place to live. That's my comfort zone.
Understood.
So I think having a knowledge of budgets and the budgeting process is really critical at this juncture in all of our communities. And in Port Hope, we are at a place where growth is going to happen. Whether we want it or not, it is going to happen. And so we have to properly manage that growth. And in order to do that, I always look at things from a financial view and then roll out from there. And financially, I think it's imperative that we grow. Taxes are always an issue on every resident's mind.
Of course, yeah.
And they're asking us to find new and creative ways to still allow all the services to be maintained, but without reaching further into their pockets. And in finance, you've got two options. You can either bring in more revenue or spend less.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah. And this is an area where you like to play. My sense is this is a joy for you to get your hands in there. And
it totally is.
That's great.
Yeah.
Right, that's great.
Yes. And we have to bring in more revenue. Yeah. That's basically the bottom line. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, timing-wise, too, where we are in our timeline, coming out of a pandemic into the next phase of whatever it is that we're going through. This idea when it comes to growth, at a time when people are still getting used to, we've just come through a couple of years of absolute challenge, and people, some aren't working these days or have chosen to move into a different business direction altogether. How do you hold that at the same time as try to reinvent from a financial perspective?
That's a very good question. We have to engage everybody. Yeah. I think communication and collaboration is actually becoming more and more key to everything, including how we manage things financially. People have to understand exactly how the finances are working and making this change, what kind of impact a specific change would have on them personally and on their community. And we need to be able to demonstrate that. And community engagement is really critical from that perspective, because most people don't enjoy finances. It's a small group of people who really kind of get excited by looking at numbers. And so you have to find a creative way to be able to share the information with people so that they can engage with it. It's not something people typically just find themselves gearing up for. Right. So we need to find a way to make people engage with that.
And that's very fair and a good vision, I think, of how do you bring people into the fold and have them understand and participate in that way. I would ask this, Laurie, imagining 4 years down the road, just help our viewers out if you could say, in that moment, 4 years after sitting in as mayor in Port Hope, what would the three things be that you would like people to say, these are the things that Laurie Carr did in that first term?
I think first, I would like people to understand and believe that we were far more collaborative and communicative than prior to me going into the mayor's office. Yes. That's a background from being with a media company that's also very dear to my heart, is proper communication. So I would like people to believe that they were more aware of what was going on, that they were consulted on a better level, and that they had more opportunity to engage. I would also like that council themselves feel that they have had more collaboration and communication with each other and with staff and with the community. So I think those are very important things for me. I would like to collaborate with council and staff in order to implement a municipal services corporation in Port Hope, specifically for economic development. And I would like to know that 4 years down the road that we had a municipal services corporation in place, that we had communication standards in place, and that we had a community that was feeling engaged and embraced.
Wonderful, thank you for that. And that brings me to another question, which is, as a leader in that seat, working with council and allies that are there to create abundance and new beginnings in Port Hope, how would you bring all those players together? What is your leadership style when it comes to working with others, Laurie, that are there to do the good work with you? As a leader in the seat of mayor, how would that energy shift?
Coming from a communications company now myself, we brainstorm always. When we're doing a new marketing proposal for a client, we all sit down, whether it be the project manager, the web developer, the creative director, we all sit down and brainstorm together because we all bring different things to the table.
Yes.
And I believe it's exactly the same with council. We all bring different stories, different backgrounds, different skill sets to the table, and 7 heads are always way better than one. So my whole management and leadership style is one of collaboration. I would also like to implement a mayor's roundtable, monthly meetings with specific groups out of Port Hope, so that we have somebody there to bring the challenges of agriculture to the table, somebody who brings the challenges and opportunities from heritage, from climate action, from planning and development. And we have such an engaged citizenry that we would have no problem getting people to sit on that round table and provide us with some fantastic insights as to what we could do to support the community better.
Real participation. That's great, Laurie. Thank
Right
you so
from
much.
the ground up.
I love that. Thank you. Well, this is perfect. We're going to take a quick break, come back and journey with you further. So thank you for this so far. And in a couple moments, we'll be back. You're watching Your Vote, Your TV's extensive coverage of the municipal election of 2022. I'm Mark Johnston. We'll be back with Laurie Carr in just a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Your Vote, Your TV's extensive coverage of the municipal election of 2022. I'm your host, Mark Johnston, here with Laurie Carr, who is a current council member and also running for mayor in the municipality of Port Hope. Laurie, thank you again for being with us.
Thank you, Mark.
So we began to explore a little bit about policy and your vision platform for moving forward in Port Hope. I'd like to get to know a little bit more about who Laurie is. And I often like to ask the question, is there something that most people don't know about Laurie that you could share with our viewers, just to get to know you from the human lens?
Again, very good question. I would say that most people probably know, because I'm constantly involved in everything, but I'm a person who is a doer, and I've been very involved personally and professionally in everything that happens in Port Hope. One thing that probably a lot of people don't know is during my growing up years, I was very involved in sport, and engaged in a lot of athletic endeavors. And I think that's what gave me the impetus to always work with groups. And I played many sports, but I really enjoyed team sports.
Yes.
And even though other sports such as skiing and golf and were more individual sport, I really did enjoy team sports and played on many of them for many years until physically I was not able to. And that changed. So then I put all that athletic energy into community energy.
Excellent, thank you. I hear transferable skills. So in terms of some of the specifics day to day, sitting in the seat as mayor of Port Hope, especially when it comes to budget, because I know that's a large background of yours and a passion as well. What are the first 2 or 3 steps when it comes to taking the budget from this current term in office to moving into the seat as mayor in Port Hope? What are the priorities? Where would you start? What are the first few things you'd take action on?
When I look at all the documentation that's provided to me, even currently as finance chair, the first things I try to extricate from the budget are the things that involve people's safety and health. So it's very important that we properly support and fund our fire services and our police services. So I see what the needs are there, and they're kind of my initial focus so that we can make sure that we are keeping our residents safe and healthy.
Yes.
So we go from the must-haves, which are things like that, to the really needs, to the nice-to-haves, to the wants or fluff kind of items. And so I try to review the budget from that perspective and make sure that we are taking care of the must-haves and the needs. And start going from there and start working with the as mayor, I would work with the individual councillors in those portfolios to find out specifically what the most important needs are within their portfolios, working with the councillor and the director.
Yes.
Because the budget comes to council with a lot of the documentation provided from staff, and they do a wonderful job at providing us with absolutely everything we need so that we can make informed decisions.
Yes, very good. And in terms of the team that you envision working with, are there any changes in terms of the structure or allocation of responsibilities? We're moving from the great Mayor Sanderson stepping down. This is his time to move on. New energy coming into the office of mayor, one way or the other. What would Laurie Carr do as mayor when it comes to the actual positioning within council? Are there any structural or architectural changes that you could see happening in terms of roles, responsibilities?
That is something that I wouldn't decide on my own.
Yes.
That is something that I would absolutely sit with the elected team and discuss as far as roles and responsibilities and where people feel comfortable, where their strengths are, and I would also sit with the directors and the CAO similarly from a staff perspective. So nothing like that is anything I would do on my own, and I would not go in with a preconceived notion as to what I would like to see at the end, because if I had that, I wouldn't be open.
Beautiful, well said, I like that. In terms of Port Hope itself, and in fact the whole region of Northumberland, there's such history here, which I think is part of the charm and the draw for many of us that migrate if you're not from here. My thinking is, do we take a moment with Laurie now to look back at the history in Port Hope and also turn and look forward to the future? How do you foresee moving in as mayor with some of the structure, industry, past lives that have happened in Port Hope, be it buildings, factories, et cetera, and how to move forward with that? Again, in one hand, how do you hold and respect the history? On the other hand, how do you build towards the future? What comes to you for that style of thinking?
We have an absolutely incredible group in Port Hope and in the ACO, and there are so many talented people on that group that are very open and able to provide advice and direction as to how we can make the history continue to be part of today's Port Hope. Yes. And that is something that I'm personally very passionate about, is preserving the history of Port Hope. I think that the history is, and the heritage of Port Hope is one of the primary economic drivers for Port Hope. And we need to maintain that, so it will continue to bring people as visitors, and it will continue to bring people as residents. People who are passionate about history and heritage, they find those places and they locate there, and it brings some incredible energy to Port Hope. And we can, through adaptive reuse, we can use the existing buildings and adaptively reuse them for current needs without having to demolish a beautiful building that has wonderful heritage features. They can be adaptively reused and used to fill a need today. And I would absolutely support that happening. We also have to support our natural heritage, yes, which is equally as important as our built heritage. And I'm a real passionate, again, person about supporting our natural heritage and climate change mitigation and the impact of our natural heritage and our built heritage, and how that translates into today.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Laurie. I am curious about one category called arts and culture. I know there's been, certainly coming through the pandemic, people are gathering again, events are happening again across the board. Your thoughts in supporting the arts and culture category when it comes to Port Hope? I'm very supportive of that. I worked very closely with Mayor Sanderson during COVID to come up with a way that we could manage to support the Capitol Theatre throughout the COVID time. And although COVID is not over, at least the facilities are open again. They're able to begin some kind of relationship again with customers and people enjoying the theaters. And I have also been very supportive through budget for groups like Critical Mass, which is an arts group in Port Hope. And I think that arts and culture sometimes get buried because they're typically part of the portfolio of Parks, Rec, and Culture. And Parks and Recreation take up such a huge part of the budget and a huge part of the physical budget. People's energy is expended on the parks and recreation and sports side of things, because that affects such a huge part of the community. But
there's an equally large part that is dedicated to arts and culture. And supporting our library, I think, is critical. It's a community hub that allows people to be there, to be themselves there, to read things that appeal to them, to research things on computers, to find themselves in a whole new world. And, you know, a library can do so much, and we have to make sure that we're equally supporting the arts and culture side to the sports and rec side.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Laurie. We have about 30 seconds left, so I always like to open the floor to say, have we missed something? Is there something inside a burning thought that you'd like to share as we wrap up today?
Well, I think you've done a really good job, Mark, of covering between personal and political sides of Laurie Carr, and all I can add is that I believe I'm distinctly qualified to be the mayor of Port Hope.
Well, thank you once again for joining us. I'm Mark Johnston. You've been watching Your Vote, Your TV's extensive coverage of the municipal election of 2022. We've been sitting with Laurie Carr, and we'll see you next time.